Turns out doing D&D character build videos is kinda fun, and the last one did reasonably well, so yeah, I think I try to do more of these. For the time being, I set myself to do at least all servants from Fate's Day. We will see if I stick with that. Sort of depends on video performance. At this point, I would also like to point out that I will change up a few things. The last video was intentionally designed to be a ripoff of Warlock the Barbarian, which, considering that it was a video about Emiya, was sorta part of the joke. Cause, you know, copying other people is kinda his thing. I want to differentiate myself a bit from him, and I hope you like it. And with that being said, let's get started and build Saber! So, today we are building Artoria Pendragon, or is it Altria? I mean, considering that FGO is easily the most successful entry into the franchise, I suppose it is Altria now. But given that this was a pretty stupid change, I elected to ignore it. Never mind that I actually kinda like the ring of that name more and named my World of Warcraft main Altria. So yeah, we are calling her Artoria for the rest of the video. Anyway, we are building Saber Artoria as she appears in Fate Zero and Fate's Day Night, because Lancer Artoria or heavens forbid Castoria would require a completely different build. Maybe I do those sometime later. Anyway, to actually play Saber we need the following things. First of all, Artoria's strength comes less from her muscles than her inherent magical powers. She is enhancing all of her strikes with mana, and you probably already know where we're going with that. Next up, magic resistance. Saber has magic resistance rank A. As a result, she is virtually immune to most forms of magic, and only the highest level stuff poses any kind of threat to her. And last but not least, it wouldn't be Saber without a magic sword that shoots giant beams of light. So we have to get our hands on one of those as well. Now for stats, we use the standard point array from the player's handbook. I personally prefer to roll for stats myself, but it doesn't really work for this video format. Anyway, you should put the highest number into Charisma. There's a reason Saber became the mascot of Type Moon, never mind that her actual Charisma rank according to her servant profile is only a B. Dexterity up next. Saber is incredibly agile and manages to dodge undodgeable blows on multiple occasions. That alone should be enough reasons for you. Strength clocks in at 13. You might be a rather slim girl, but even though we don't quite see it, the dialogue in the visual novel implies that you have a rather muscular body to a point where you angst a little bit about it once you actually develop feelings for your master. Her constitution should probably be higher than 12, considering that her endurance rank is A, but that's the bane of the standard array. We have to pick priorities. In either case, you're still rather tough and can take more of a beating than one would expect looking at you. 10 points in intelligence should be fine, however. Saber is not stupid, but she isn't exactly presented as a genius either, so I think the normal human average is appropriate. We are dumping wisdom because we don't really need it for this build. Saber has enormous willpower and is generally considered a wise ruler during her time. But she also had a lot of trouble understanding other people, and she could have saved herself a lot of trouble if she hadn't failed some really important insight checks. As far as race is concerned, we make Saber a human. If you want to mix things up a little bit, I would recommend to make her a red dragonborn, since her name is Pendragon and she has the blood of a red dragon flowing through her veins. Azima would also work, and if you are really into min-maxing, Yuan-Ti is also worth considering. But the most appropriate race for this build is in the end the variant human. You get to increase 2 ability scores of your choice. We are rolling with Charisma since it is your most important stat, and Strength because even numbers are just better than odd ones. As a variant human, you also get to pick an additional skill proficiency. We are taking Animal Handling. You are a trained squire and know how to handle a horse. And you once raced a lion cub, so you certainly know what you're doing. Next up, you get to pick one feat of your choice. Artoria is not much of a mage, but she has the potential to be one. As such, we pick the Magic Initiate feat, which lets you pick 2 cantrips and 1 level 1 spell from any spell list of your choice. We are picking Booming Blade, Gust and Thunder Wave from the Sorcerer spell list. Why? Because they do a decent job imitating the effects of invisible air. Gust gives you some slight control over wind, Thunder Wave does basically the same as Artoria's Hammer of the Wind King, shooting a wave of force at your opponent, pushing them away. It's only a bit louder. Since there aren't any spells that let you shoot compressed wind, this is the closest thing we got, and Booming Blade basically works the same. For a background we are picking the soldier background. Artoria wasn't raised a noble, but rather a scryer, and the first years of her rule were dominated by war, and she spent a lot of time on the battlefield. As a soldier, you're proficient in athletics and intimidation, which is great to keep your men in line. If you prefer, you can however pick the noble or knight of the order background. The reason why I picked the soldier background is that I wanted her to be proficient with land vehicles, so she can ride a motorcycle should the opportunity arise. There are motorcycles in Descent into Avernus, by the way. Now we get to the interesting part, the classes, and you probably already know where we are going with this, don't you? Well, Artoria starts her journey as a Warlock, obviously. The moment she pulled the sword out of the stone, she stopped being human, and as such I think it only makes sense to make her a Hexblade. Yes, I know that I also made Emiya a Hexblade. They basically have the same patron, so that shouldn't be too surprising. If you don't want to be a Hexblade for whatever reason, you can also make her patron the Lady of the Lake, which would make her a Warlock of the Archfey. However, that's not nearly as effective for this build. Anyway, in case you need a refresher, as a Hexblade, you're proficient with medium armor and all martial weapons. You can bond with a martial weapon that lacks the two-handed property and use charisma instead of strength or dexterity for your attack and damage rolls with it. This, however, works just fine with the versatile feature of longswords, and I would describe Excalibur as such. So you can swing it with both hands for a bit of extra damage. You also gain Hexblade's Curse. Artoria isn't exactly the type who curses people, but this bit of extra damage certainly doesn't hurt. Well, it does your opponent. Using that logic, I would also recommend to pick up Hex as one of your first level spells. Your second spell should probably be Protection from Evil and Good, which gives you quite the advantage when fighting unholy creatures. For your cantrips, you should take True Strike. Frankly, you should pick any other cantrip, but it's simply the only one that feels in character for her. And Thunderclap. Basically for the same reason we picked up Booming Blade and Thunderwave earlier. As far as your skill proficiency are concerned, I would recommend to pick up History. Saber is a pretty unique case. She technically isn't considered a heroic spirit when summoned in the Grail War. It's complicated. As such, she doesn't have access to the knowledge other servants retrieve from the Throne of Heroes. Yet she is able to deduce Lancer's identity with ease since she is rather well read. For your second proficiency, take Deception. You manage to fool your entire country into thinking that you are a man, and those who were able to see through that lie knew better than questioning you. You are also proficient with Wisdom saving throws, which somewhat makes up for the fact that we dumped Wisdom earlier. As a second level Warlock, you get an additional spell. I would pick Expeditious Retreat. Saber is rather fast and can close the distance between herself and the opponent in an instant. You also get access to 2 Eldritch Invocation. You should pick Armor of Shadows, which allows you to cast Mage Armor on yourself. As we learned in Fate Zero, Saber's armor is purely magical in nature and can be bypassed by magic objects that cancel out magic. As such, Mage Armor seems to be more appropriate than wearing actual armor. Frankly, plate armor, or at least half plate, which Saber is seemingly wearing, would be more desirable, but mage armor has the benefit that it doesn't restrain your movement, so in case you need to make a stealth check, you don't get any disadvantage. Like with Emiya, we don't really care about the second Eldritch Invocation yet, since we are swapping it out with the next level. Speaking of which, third level Warlocks get to choose a Pact Boom, and you shouldn't be surprised that we are taking the Pact of the Blade, allowing you to create a magic weapon out of thin air. If you consider Excalibur a greatsword instead of a longsword, I got good news for you, because you can use Pact of the Blade to create a greatsword and still gain all the benefits from Hex Warrior. Even better, you can now also pick the improved Pact Weapon Eldritch Invocation that gives you a +1 bonus to all your attack and damage rolls made with your Pact Weapon. This is as good as it gets during the character building process. Frankly, Excalibur is more like a holy avenger, but this has to do for now. Also, you can determine the appearance of a Pact Weapon. Ask your Dungeon Master if it can appear like an invisible sword made out of wind. If he says no, you also have access to level 2 spells now, so you can pick the invisibility spell. Ask your Dungeon Master if you can use it to turn your weapon invisible, even though it says creature in the spell description. If not, it's at least not an unreasonable spell for Artoria. Invisible air can be expended to cover bigger objects, like herself sitting on a motorcycle. Saber didn't use it to turn herself invisible, and we don't know if she could, but we also have nothing that says that she cannot. Frankly, the other level 2 spells from the Warlock spell list just doesn't fit her character, and invisibility at least seems like something Artoria might be able to do, so we're taking it. Now we are moving on to Paladin. When multiclassing into Paladin, you gain an additional skill proficiency from the Paladin list. Pick up Persuasion. You didn't just lie to your people all the time, you led them, and that required you to make them believe in you. You also gain Divine Sense. Servants can detect the presence of other servants, and if we consider them as undead, they will appear on your divine radar. Furthermore, you get lay on hands. You could use it to heal other people, but generally you use it more for yourself since your master is inept and cannot support you properly. Might not be enough to heal that wound from that Irishman's spear though. With your second level in Paladin, you get to choose a fighting style. Saber's intuition allows her to avoid some blows that would have otherwise killed her. As such, I would recommend to pick up the defense style, especially since your AC isn't quite as high as it could be, as we decided to use mage armor instead of blade. In all honesty, I would recommend to put a level in Paladin before dipping into Warlock, so you can get the heavy armor proficiency and wear that, but we are trying to make the most accurate build here. Not the best. And it should be noted that mage armor, at will, can outclass every armor type, which you might be able to do if you rolled for stats, instead of using the standard array. Besides that, you also get Divine Smite, and you probably already saw this one coming. It works exactly like Mana Burst, so I won't dwell on it. You also get Paladin spells now. I won't bother to elaborate on all Paladin spells here. Most of them are fine and fit Saber rather nicely, so prepare whatever you want. That being said, Bless for better saving throws and Compelled Duel just seem really Saber-like to me. But chances are that you want to save up all your spell slots for Divine Smite anyway. And like Saber, who can recover at least some of her mana despite having a master who cannot provide her with any magical energy, you recover your 2 Warlock spell slots after every short rest, which means that you should always have some spell slots left to smite. Once you hit level 3 in Paladin, you have to pick a Sacred Oath. This is where things get a bit complicated. We could spend hours discussing what the most fitting oath is for Artoria. There are valid points to be made that we should pick the Oath of the Crown, Devotion or Glory. However, we are going with the Oath of the Ancients. This might seem like a bit of an odd choice, especially since the Green Knight is something Gawain had to deal with. But the tenets of this oath match the restraints of the Round Table put onto Excalibur rather well, and you were blessed by the Lady of the Lake, giving you a connection to Fae as well. Not to mention that your sister Morgan can also be considered a Fae. Pick one of the other oaths if you want, but trust me, it will make sense later. Also, if you want to be Saber Altar, pick Oath of Conquest. The build is otherwise the same. Anyway, Paladins with the Oath of the Ancients gain 2 Channel Divinity options. Nature's Wrath certainly isn't a Artoria skill, so I'm not gonna pretend otherwise. Turn the Faithless on the other hand lets you chase away Fae and Fiends who certainly would fear holy warriors such as you. You also get some oath spells, but we don't really care about those either. With your 4th level in Paladin you get your first ability score improvement, and since we are using Charisma for pretty much everything, you should increase it by 2 to a score of 18. 5th level Paladins get 2nd level spell slots. You can now use Find Steed to summon Dunstallion. Usually Artoria only has a horse when summoned as a lancer, but I figured it would be at least worth bringing up. Also we get extra attack, not much to say here, Artoria is just good at cutting people. The 6th level in Paladin is where things get interesting. You get the Aura of Protection, which lets you and all of your allies within 10 feet add your Charisma modifier to your saving throws. Since your Charisma modifier is already pretty high, this means that you always have a decent bonus to your saving throws, and most of the more powerful spells a caster could throw at you require you to make a spell save. This means you have pretty good chances to resist their effects, and we follow it up with the 7th level in Paladin. Thanks to the Oath of the Ancient, you get Aura of Warding, which gives you resistance to all damage from spells. Yeah, this is why we picked Oath of the Ancients. When I said that Saber has magic resistance rank A, I meant it. Thanks to your Aura of Protection, you should be able to make most spell saves, but even if not, you can still shrug most things off with this. If you make your saving throw, the fireball only hits you with a quarter of its total power, so you barely feel it. You're a nightmare for casters to fight, and it gets even better, because your 8th level in Paladin gives you another ability score improvement. This time however, we are taking the Mage Slayer feat instead. This feat allows you to make an opportunity attack when a creature within 5 feet of you casts a spell. If your creature has to make a concentration saving throw after taking damage from you, they have a disadvantage on that saving throw, and you have advantage on saving throws against spells cast by a creature within 5 feet of you. Let me summarize that real quick. You get to add your Charisma modifier on all of your save throws. You have advantage on spell saves when you're standing next to the spellcaster you're fighting, and you get to half every magic damage you take. Spellcasters have nothing on you, but in case it still isn't enough for you, 9th level paladins get access to 3rd level spells, which allows you to cast Dispel Magic and remove Curse to remove unwanted spell effects from you. Of course, this only works if the spell in question wasn't one that makes you unable to act. 10th level paladins gain Aura of Courage. which means you can't be frightened. Artoria is not the type of person who runs away. Maybe she retreats, but I cannot really think of any situation where she was actually afraid. 11 fellow paladins gain improved divine smite. You're now so used to using mana burst that all of your strikes use it to deal an extra 1d8 radiant damage. At level 12 in paladin you gain another ability score improvement to max out your charisma. You now get +5 to all your saving throws and your attack with your pact weapon. So yeah, you are just really great at everything now. 13th level paladins get access to 4th level spell slots. We don't really care about the spell, so moving on. The 14th level paladin grants you cleansing touch, meaning you can now dispel magic without using a spell slot. You can use it a number of times equal to your charisma modifier, which, as we already established, is disgustingly high. Even better, unlike dispel magic, cleansing touch doesn't care about the spell level. Another reason why casters really don't want to fight you. 15th level paladins get another Oath feature. Oath of the Ancients gives you Undying Sentinel. Saber's endurance is A. She can survive a lot of things, and this is manifested in this feature. When you drop to 0 hit points, you can choose to drop to 1 instead, once per long rest, to continue fighting. You also don't suffer any drawbacks of old age, and you can't be aged magically. Now Saber doesn't age at all, but this is as close as we can get to that. With your 16th level paladin you get another ability score improvement. You could use it for a number of things, but I would recommend to increase the dexterity for better AC and initiative. Saber really should have it maxed out, but sadly we don't have enough points for that. We cap things off with a 17th level paladin. You now have access to 5th level spells, which means you can now pick up Destructive Wave and Holy Weapon. Destructive Wave allows you to strike the ground and create a burst of divine energy that hits every target of your choice within 30 feet for 5d6 thunder and 5d6 radiant damage. Holy Weapon allows you to channel holy power through your weapon, causing you to emit light and dealing 2d8 extra radiant damage with all your weapon attacks as long as you're concentrating on the spell. Saber used this one in a duel against Diarmut in Fate Zero. Additionally, you can release that energy as a bonus action, hitting every creature within 30 feet for 48 radiant damage and blinding them if they fail their saving throw. Make sure to scream Excalibur as your verbal component when doing so. And that about wraps things up. Now here are some extra thoughts. I would recommend to dump strength instead of wisdom because you don't really need it for anything, and having better wisdom saves is generally more useful. The only reason I didn't dump strength for this build is because you need a strength score of 13 to multiclass into paladin. A situation you can avoid if you start as a paladin instead of a warlock, but I decided to do it this way for the sake of accuracy. One thing we missed out on is Saber's ability to walk on water. Just ask your dungeon master to give you a ring of water walking, I suppose. If you really want a water walk spell, you can alternatively go for build with 10 levels in War Cleric, 7 levels in Paladin, and 3 levels in Warlock. I wanted however to take as many levels in Paladin as I could, since Paladin, in my opinion, represents Saber's abilities the best. And how does this build hold up? Well, Hexblade Paladin is a disgustingly powerful combo. You have great saving throws across the board and a high attack and damage modifier. Also, you are pretty good in social situations. And having a pool of spell slots you gain on a short rest that you can freely use for divine smites is just really powerful. In addition, as an Oath of the Ancients paladin, you might as well be immune to magic. You are a better mage killer than Kiritsugu could ever hope to be. This is a very powerful and versatile build, which will make your dungeon master very frustrated. No wonder that they say that Saber is the strongest class. There are hardly any constants built either. The most negative aspect is that your AC is not as high as it could be. You can easily boost it by wearing better armor or using a shield if you're okay with sacrificing a bit of accuracy. But yeah, with a build like this you're ready for pretty much any challenge. But what do you think? Would you build Saber differently? Let me know in the comments, and also tell me which servant you want me to build next. I am Tricky Fox. Stay foxy.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell. But you know I'll never tell that I know you know so well. Sometimes